The financial wizards were crazed by their astral overshadowing and goaded into a greedy desire to consume all. They were adamant in their determination to share no profits with anyone, not even the goose Tesla, who had laid the golden egg. Against this mighty army of darkness, George Westinghouse stood out like a giant pillar of light, but a lone giant. The financial interests were set to see the company destroyed rather than yield a single dollar in horsepower royalty to Tesla. But even one on the side of the forces of light is in itself a victorious majority against evil. Westinghouse firmly grasped the scales of justice, and he went direct to Tesla and humbly told the story of his seeming defeat. Tesla quickly turned it into a spiritual triumph that will ring down through the years as a cosmic moment in which two men touched divinity. Standing there before Westinghouse, Tesla smiled serenely and tore up his contract without a trace of bitterness. At that moment, he was entitled to at least $12 million in royalties, but he tossed the scraps of his contract into the wastebasket. He had saved the Westinghouse organization, and Westinghouse would give his polyphase system to the world. The bankers could satisfy their love for money. Today, this unfortunate planet is still reaping the black harvest from the seed scattered far and wide by the bewitched money men. It has been said often that failure to pay horsepower royalties to Tesla proved to be the greatest handicap to scientific and industrial progress which the human race has ever experienced on this globe. In this year of 1958, the United States and all allied nations of the world are wondering why scientific superiority has been lost in recent years. The answer is simple. The pattern of events is not difficult to trace. Karmic law was set in motion by the New York State Prison using the Tesla alternating current invention to electrocute condemned prisoners. The karmic debt thus incurred precipitated at the point where alternating current development was centered. Tesla was a white magician and was protected against direct attack by the dark forces. He could be reached only indirectly, but the Westinghouse organization, through its money system, was wide open. The dark forces were able to attack freely through that open channel. This imperiled the work of Tesla. But since it was society that connived to support the prison authorities in their nefarious work, it is society that has had to suffer the karmic results. America allowed the Tesla inventions to be misused. It is America that must pay the karmic debt through a decline in scientific achievement. A very few years after Tesla and Westinghouse made their historic decision, Tesla was a global intellectual giant of such stature that he could easily, with the use of his inventions and discoveries, have swung this planet from evil to goodness, from darkness to light, from ignorance to illumination. But society, in its utter complacency, preferred prison methods to the methods of a Venusian initiate. And so the mills of the gods continue to grind slowly, awaiting the incoming seventh ray, which would bring the cleansing violet fire of transmutation to the dark star. After the financial setback engendered by the Westinghouse money men, Tesla never again had sufficient funds to develop in inventions. On many occasions, his co-workers begged him to develop some small aspect of his inventions in order to make money to support his greater discoveries. But Tesla always refused to spend his time on what he termed small stuff. He had no desire to benefit a few people. He desired only to benefit humanity. Some of his co-workers felt that he was just being stubborn, but Tesla wisely knew his proper course. It must be remembered that another great initiate by the name of Jesus also tried to sell society on the ideal of a better world. In this year of 1958, Jesus is still patiently waiting for the majority to join the minority in the support of his efforts. Tesla was well acquainted with the work of Jesus and with the work of hundreds of other initiates who had made supreme sacrifices for a belligerent and ungrateful humanity. Sanat Kumara waited 19 million years for the prodigal sons of earth to grow weary of consuming their husk. Intuitively, Tesla knew that he, too, could await the day of man's great awakening. When Tesla was nearly 80 years of age, he was asked to give a speech before the Institute of Immigrant Welfare, which at a dinner meeting at the Hotel Biltmore in May 12, 1938, was to present the great inventor with an honorary citation. Tesla wrote out a speech which was read at the dinner because he did not feel equal to attending in person. He had not only survived through many, many years of extreme poverty, but he had been ridiculed for failing to commercialize his inventions. He was often unable to pay his hotel bills and was forced to move frequently, leaving his luggage until friends could assist him to get settled in another lodging place. Yet with this specter of poverty always dogging at his heels, he gazed without rancor at a world which had waxed wealthy out of the power he had made available. And so, on the occasion of the Biltmore dinner, he paid tribute to Westinghouse in a magnificent testimonial to the heartfelt friendship which had always existed between the two men. George Westinghouse was, in my opinion, the only man on this globe who could take my alternating current system under the circumstances then existing and win the battle against prejudice and money power. He was a pioneer of imposing stature, one of the world's true noblemen, of whom America may well be proud, and to whom humanity owes an immense debt of gratitude. So it was at the age of 80 that Tesla, the only man on the globe who could have invented alternating current, cited George Westinghouse as the only man on the dark star who could have developed it in spite of the pitiless and ruthless attacks by the forces of darkness, entrenched behind the money screen within his own company. Tesla declared his position as an initiate in this statement about his friend, just as surely as did another initiate who entered into the temple and flayed the moneylenders with a whip. As a Venusian, Tesla was not karmically obliged to deal with money lenders. His magnificent gesture of tearing up his own contract with Westinghouse showed that as a Venusian, he was willing to go to any length to help his friend, knowing full well that Westinghouse was shouldering up for all humanity a karmic burden so great that he could scarcely bear up under it. With the aid of Tesla's warm and enduring friendship, he did bear up, giving Tesla's polyphase system to the world, thus eliminating a vast part of society's karmic debt. Tesla voiced a divine pronouncement when he stated that George Westinghouse was one of the world's true noblemen. During the final years of his life, as he neared the age of 80, Tesla was aided by a $7,200 annual honorarium paid to him by the Yugoslav government on behalf of the Tesla Institute at Belgrade. As the hour of Tesla's birth approached, the spaceship on which he was born neared the Earth in a mountain province that is now part of Yugoslavia. As the hour of his death approached, it was Yugoslavia that honored him and supported him financially. The Tesla Institute was opened in Belgrade in 1936 in commemoration of Tesla's 80th birthday. Formal celebrations were held throughout the country over a period of a week, honoring the greatest national hero the Yugoslavs had ever known. The Tesla Institute, endowed by both government and private sources, was equipped with a splendid research laboratory and library. Every bit of writing or information that had any bearing on Tesla and his inventions was collected and made available to research students at the Institute. American students had been deprived of any opportunity to learn about Tesla because his name is seldom mentioned in school books, even science textbooks. In the United States, the nation which Tesla had honored with his citizenship, and the point from which his great inventions had rayed forth like light from a central sun, Tesla passed his 80th birthday quietly. He was interviewed and questioned about his world wireless system for electrical distribution, a system which he had perfected many years before, and which rendered his polyphase system obsolete. He showed not the slightest sign of resentment over the fact that billions upon billions of dollars had been wasted by promoters in a greedy effort to extract the last penny of profit from an electrical system that was as outmoded as a dinosaur. Tesla was comforted by his own inner joyous knowledge that he had not been called to share in commercial exploitations that needlessly sapped the wealth of the world. His philosophy of brotherhood, of friendship toward humanity, of gratitude toward his Creator never wavered, and so he said when questioned about his world wireless power system, "Perhaps I was a little premature. We can get along without it as long as my polyphase system continues to meet our needs. Just as soon as the need arises, however, I have the system ready to be used with complete success." It is still ready, and it is still waiting to be used. Promoters are still withholding from the public the knowledge that such a system exists as an invention, waiting to be used. Promoters are still seeking to expand Tesla's obsolete polyphase system throughout the world, burdening the earth with miles upon miles of needless cables, conduits, wires, and posts, providing dangerous playthings for high winds and blizzards. But this is the greedy method by which fortunes are made at the expense of the public. In the New Age, only New Age methods will be utilized. Very soon now will come the big planetary house cleaning. Then down will come all the cables, conduits, wires, and posts, which the public is now paying to have installed. What fools these mortals be! Since Otis T. Carr has now come forth with his free energy devices, it is quite probable that Tesla, working from Shambhala, has in mind a system that will obsolete the world wireless system. But at any rate, as Tesla said on his 80th birthday, the system is there, waiting to be used with complete success if needed. It calls for a small antenna device to be attached atop every house, office building, shop, and factory. This device will enable the occupants of the building to have all the electricity they need without meters or wirings. The antenna will pick up a beamed supply of current, just as a radio picks up a broadcasted program. Inside the home or building, the electrical service units such as lights, irons, stoves, adding machines, typewriters, and so forth will be free from wires and plugs for wall outlets. The units will pick up the necessary current beamed from the antenna. Even when Tesla had his old laboratories on South Main Street, now West Broadway, in New York, he had lights which could be picked up and placed in any position anywhere in the laboratory, wherever light happened to be needed at the moment. His lights were merely glass tubes, free from wires and wall fixtures. So the inventor for many years enjoyed the fruits of his own inventions, while the public has paid and paid and paid the pipers who ever pipe for more money profits from their outmoded merchandise. The Tesla wireless method for electrical distribution is a gift which the world might have utilized for the past half-century had the public demanded it. But an uninformed public is a silent public. The public gets its information largely from newspapers and magazines, radio, and TV. These sources are, in turn, controlled and censored by their advertisers and government secret guarders. This conditioned public then dictates to its teachers and its preachers, telling them what to teach and what pulpit topics would be most uplifting to the community spirit. Thus the vicious circle whirls round and round like a Sputnik. Even Tesla himself was told off by J.P. Morgan when he explained his world wireless system to the financier. Morgan listened to Tesla describe the glories of his invention, and then the money baron dismissed the whole subject as impractical because, as he pointed out, there would be no way of making money off the people if the people could have as much electricity as they wished by merely putting up a little antenna on their homes or factories or office buildings. Morgan further reminded Tesla that under the present system, the manufacturers of wires, poles, and electrical installation equipment of all kinds could make fortunes, and in addition, the electricity could be metered and everybody could be charged for every kilowatt they used. Tesla pointed out that electricity was free in the atmosphere, a free gift of God to his people, but such idealism naturally could not penetrate the thinking of a financier. Early in the years when Tesla was training Otis T. Carr, he called Carr's attention to the same fact. Electricity is free in the atmosphere, a gift of God to his people. Carr agreed with Tesla instantly, but Carr was not a financier. He was merely working as a clerk in a hotel package room. Perhaps therein lies the answer. Farewell of the Dove. When Tesla left his sleeping body on the night of January the 7th, 1943, he did not return to it. The threefold flame, which had blazed so brightly in his physical heart for 87 years, was withdrawn into his subtle structure. The flowing line of electronic light, known as the silver cord, which enters the body at the top of the head and is anchored in the heart, with another branch anchored in the brain, was broken. And once the flow of electronic light ceased, no more pure God substance, carrying the energies of the rays, entered the physical body through the silver cord. The power which beats the heart of man, the heart of a solar system, and the heart of a cosmos, was withdrawn from the physical. Tesla stood free to enter in full consciousness the realms of unlimited, lighted awareness that he had left 87 years earlier, in order that he might walk and talk with men on the planet Earth. During his years in America, Tesla had mentioned to certain persons, among them John J. O'Neill, that he planned to live 130 years. This statement was privately regarded as another bit of eccentricity that could come only from the lips of the genius Tesla. It was understood that Tesla had earlier fixed the period of his stay on Earth at 150 years. He changed the figure shortly after World War I, when prohibition was adopted. Because of his paradoxical statements about the matter at that time and the unusual circumstances surrounding his pronouncement, his words were interpreted in the usual Earth manner, and it was generally believed that the Prohibition Amendment had somehow shortened his life. However, Tesla was not in any sense a drinking man, as the term is generally used. Neither was Tesla a hearty eater. It was true that for years and years, immaculately groomed and attired in full dress, he entered the Hotel Waldorf dining room promptly each evening at 8 o'clock, sitting quietly alone at his reserved table and dining while he read through several newspapers until 10 p.m. It was true that in his early days in New York, he often gave lavish dinner parties for many guests, taking them afterward to his laboratories on South Fifth Avenue for an evening's entertainment. There he demonstrated to his guests thrilling electrical feats of such magnitude that men literally felt their hair rising straight up on their astonished heads. Women squealed and giggled and would have swooned, except that they did not want to miss an instant of the magic. But Tesla, while the very core and center of these dinner parties, Magic Evening and Conversation Fest, actually ate little food. As the years passed, he was seldom observed eating. Otis T. Carr said that during the 3 years that he was being trained by Tesla, he never saw him consume any food. However, prior to Prohibition days, Tesla would occasionally, and after due ceremony, drink a tiny glass of whiskey. He said that it gave him a special type of energy that he could use. Then, when Prohibition came, he ordered his last glass of whiskey and made the astonishing statement that Prohibition would shorten his life by 20 years, reducing his time on Earth from 150 to 130 years. In retrospect, it is clear that he was making a direct reference to the future political situation in the United States and to the world situation in general. Prohibition was an early symptom that a sick world was growing sicker. A man of Tesla's caliber was certainly not vitally concerned with a glass of whiskey per se. In the final analysis, it is also clear that Tesla was using the whiskey as a focus for some sort of transmutation. It is doubtless quite true that the tiny glass of liquid would supply him with a special sort of energy, but only after he had called certain energies into action within the liquid. Tesla's atomic structure was relatively clean, at least during the first 70 or 75 years of his life, or perhaps even longer. Apparently at the close, as he was nearing 87 years, the atoms may have slowed their revolutions somewhat, but at no time did he permit himself to take on an accumulation of astral debris. For remember, Tesla could see the astral filth all about him and took special precautions to avoid it. For many, many years, he passed currents of tremendously high voltage and high frequency through his body. His associates and friends were astonished that these experiments proved not only harmless but healthful, and most people thought it was merely a feat of showmanship. It was not, however, but rather something which Tesla had extracted from the ether as a definite construct for his own protection. His atomic structure was normally vibrating at a very high rate, and the vibrations were raised even higher by passing the electric currents through his body tissues. He could not burden such a body with quantities of food intended for the ordinary earthman. Moreover, the process of transmuting food already cooked and prepared would have been too laborious. It would require a useless expenditure of time and energy. But a small glass of distilled alcohol could probably have been acted upon instantly by forces summoned into action by Tesla. The little contemplated ceremony in which Tesla engaged before he finally raises the glass to his lips was probably the transmuting ceremony. It could be performed in public in any bar without attracting any attention whatsoever. A better understanding of this action can be arrived at by reading the accounts of experiences which various Earthmen have had while visiting on board spacecraft. All of these contacts agree on one point. When they board the craft, they are handed a beautiful crystal goblet containing a liquid of such delightful flavor and a fragrance that is said to be utterly indescribable. It is non-alcoholic, but when it is consumed, it provides the body with a buoyant, refreshing type of energy, which clears the brain and gives the individual a subtle sense of serene awareness, freeing him from any feeling of fear or hostility. Those contacts who have been invited to dine aboard spaceships have had some interesting experiences along similar lines. George Van Tassel of Giant Rock, California, author of several books on spaceships and space people, said that he was offered small cubes of substance that resembled ordinary cubes of sugar, but before eating them he was asked to qualify them with any flavor he desired. If he thought of ice cream while gazing at the cube, it tasted like the most delicious ice cream. If he thought of a juicy steak, it tasted like a juicy steak, and so on. George Adamski, in his book Inside the Spaceships, tells about dining on board a spacecraft and enjoying a wonderful meal of fabulous food that tasted like the finest meats and vegetables and desserts, but actually the dishes did not seem to fall into any of these categories. Adamski was also treated to a preliminary crystal goblet of the marvelous liquid which has been known down through the ages as elixir of the gods. But all of this food and drink served aboard spacecraft is precipitated direct from universal supply. All adepts must be able to practice precipitation. Moreover, during the Aquarian Age, we must all relearn this method, which we knew at one time, but which was blotted from our racial memory by the contamination brought in by the laggards. Now I'm going to stop right here because I'm at 28 minutes. Going to cut off any time.